Hello guys and welcome back. What I would like to show you today, if you look what I have here, this is what we did sometime in the past about how you could set up like a base project in Go. And what I would like to do, of course, today would be to do some advanced refactoring to the code we already have written in the past. And this has to do with the way middlewares are handled. So when it comes to middleware, one really key important thing you need to understand is um, with the way we have it written here. So if I go over the config and then middlewares, we have a bunch of this set up here. So one thing you have to really pay attention to, if you have, for example, data or an operation or some information that are really specific for a given request, and you feel this is something that doesn't need to be reused all the time, it makes a lot of sense to have this as a middleware. Or if you want, of course, do like things like auth, where you want this to happen each time a request comes in. That makes perfect sense to have something like that, so that you have whenever a user visits an authenticated endpoint, he has to first go through, let's say, your auth middleware, and then has to verify that. But if you see what we have here, we have my Postgres middleware, and if I look through our API, say for example events, or let me see, miss. I think maybe we might have wrapped it in the end. Let me see. So with middleware, let me see how that's defined. Um, so we have this here, but we don't have both. And of course, for us to be able to use those, we can, if we put it here, it's going to, of course, apply to everything. But of course, we also have the option of coming inside this definition, say in here, and now maybe here we can say g.use, and then we'll pass that middleware. Okay, so we could say middleware dot um, Postgres. How did we define it? Middleware dot Postgres middleware. Something like this. And what it means is that all these requests on this endpoint group events would be forced to use this middleware. So, but what I would like to show you in this tutorial, of course, would be, if you look at this, you would realize that what this actually means, if the way we are using our middleware, is that for each request that comes in via this events API group, so event slash form slash WS, it means that this will be rerun. So what it means is that this would try to make a new connection to the database and do all of this. And if you do some form of load testing, for example, maybe with K6, I hope you're familiar with this. If you don't, so maybe also probably put a link so you can download it if you want to get into load tests. I can also maybe even do a tutorial if you want. But if you use something like K6 to do a load testing on this API, what you will realize, of course, is that one thing, your database will start running out of active connections, because each request would have to do this operation. I can already imagine this can really go crazy. Okay, and this, of course, would not be what you want. So that is why we are actually doing this tutorial. So what I'm going to show you now is one simple and quick fix that we can modify this, so that things like, say, database connection, we can reuse it over the entirety of over the lifetime of our application, and we then actually get to really use like our polling configuration that we have for a database. So that's really what I would like to show you in this tutorial. So I'm going to get rid of this, and then we can really jump right in. Oh, sorry, I got rid of the wrong one. Okay, so we can jump right in to start making our changes. So the first thing I'm probably going to want to do is to go to our middleware, and for example, let's say the database, I'm probably just going to copy this, okay? And then I go to, let's say in my helpers, I create a new file and I call this db.go, and of course package helpers, okay? And my PC is kind of slow this evening for no reason I can define. Anyways, now I create a new function and I can call this maybe init pg database, something like this. And of course, what is really important is, like, I will of course try to return two things. So one of them would be a pointer to sql.db, and come on, I want to return two things. And of course, and then I return an error. Okay, so in here, I can just dump what I got from the other place. I can get rid of this, and maybe also get rid of this, get rid of this. Okay, and bring this back. I'm not returning. Let's save this first. And now what I can simply do, of course, is so here, instead of panicking, what I can simply do now is I return nil and this error. And also I do the exact same here. So I return nil and the error. And now in the end, I simply return db and nil. So that's really it. So I get rid of this. So that's really one thing we can do. So we just take out that logic, put it in a separate file. And of course, to make things interesting, we can also, because I also just saw that we had one also for SQL. So I'm just going to probably also copy this as well and come back in here. And now I can say, create a new function also called this func init. Maybe I say my SQL database, something like this. And again, I return in this case, I'm going to return a gumdb instant pointer and of course an error. Okay, and now I simply just dump that code in here again. Okay, so let me see. So I think I have everything I need. And now what is this? I'm just gonna um get rid of this one. I'm not really using this config file, but you get the point. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm just gonna put these 5 things here now. Okay, and so again, just like before, instead of panicking, we return, or maybe we can simply return db and error, of course. And in this case, I think that's mostly it now. So here we simply now return db and nil. So that's really it. These are just the two functions with, again, the point, don't forget, the point is that we would like to reuse this across our endpoint or whatever, just so that we don't have to do all of this for every incoming request. So this can be, of course, extended to other functionalities your app might have. Okay, so now I'm just providing strings. So maybe here I just change this to what is the MySQL? I think from my Microsoft SQL Server, I don't remember. I think it's something 1360. I can't remember, but I'm just gonna maybe put 1360 here. I think it's 3.3. I don't remember actually. Maybe I can also quickly check. Now I will leave it. It's really not important. Anyways, the important thing is that we have these two functions created like this, and now what we can actually just do is to go to our main file. So I can come over here, just collapse all of this, come over to, so we can also say, I can do clear all of this, say go mod let me see, can say go mod tidy, for example, because I'm getting some error from our go mod and I don't like it. I don't like, if I have to see any error anyway, it should not be in my go mod file. Anyways, I'm going to collapse this and let it do what it needs to do. And then I'm just going to come into main. And now what I can simply do is to, in here, to initialize those just basically call these functions that we've created. Okay, so and what I can simply actually do is to maybe come here, create new arguments. Maybe I call this pgdb. So this is going to be of type of course sql.db, and of course now I need again, depending on what you want, now I can have another one here. I can say sql.db. Again, this one I'm just gonna, this case I'm using gum in our app, so I'm going to initialize it like this as well. Okay, so now what I can simply do is to come down here. I don't know, anywhere, doesn't really matter, maybe down here, and now I can call those functions. I can say helpers dot come on, help me, why is this so init SQL, and of course in the end this I get two things, and I can simply just go ahead. Maybe I'd also just come up here, create a new argument, so error, error, so that I can really come up here and now say SQL SQLDB and error will be equal to this. And now, of course, we handle the error. Say if error is not equal to nil, stuff like that. Maybe in this case now we panic. I can say it makes sense to do so. And of course, we do same again. So PG, again, error is equal to helpers.init PG database. Again, we do the exact same thing. Okay. So now we have initialized this at the beginning of our app. And once this is okay, what we can now actually simply do is to, when we initialize our APIs, which is also what we had up here. So maybe I'll just move this logic up, bring them up here. And now here, which also housed our main API. Of course, if you remember, we used all of this to just do some input sanitization. I'm just going to comment all of this out now, for it's really not needed in this case. Okay, and now what we can simply do is to modify our API. So we have this, this defined, and then what we can simply do is to now have this wrap around our endpoints. So, but before we do that, what thing I can't do this for all our endpoints, the ones already have defined until now, but I would like to, of course, show you a simple example. So I can go to handlers and maybe let's say events. No, I go to yes, okay, let me say auth. So we have login handler and we have logout. No, let me say user, or this is a lot, but anyways, I can come in here and create a file and call it main.go. And so now, of course, package users, and now I can create a struct. I can call this user handler. Of course, it's a struct, and it's just gonna have. I think for our users, we only need access to the. Let me think, MySQL database, for example, whatever. So here I can simply see some like SQL DB. It's gonna be, of course, in this case, GOMDB. Maybe that's really all we want. And now what I can simply do is to create a function that we can use to initialize this struct. So I can say new user handler. And again, it's going to take I'm going to probably call this DB. So it's going to be of type, of course, GOMDB. And it's going to return a pointer to, come on, to user handler. And then here we simply return user handler, then DB, of course, SQL becomes DB. Okay, and now what we can simply do when we have something like this is probably just go ahead and define receiver functions on our struct. So in here we can just say create a func. So I'm just probably going to call this U. So this is going to be a point. Oh, go away. So it's going to be a pointer to, of course, our user handler, and the function now I can say, for example, handle create. And again, just like we would before, it's just like we have defined our handlers. It's going to, of course, take a gene context. And now what we can simply do is to now call create, come on, create handler. And now, of course, it expects a gene handler. So we simply, a gene context rather, so we simply pass that in. But now the interesting thing is now we can actually modify this. So if I look down here, let me see, do we have access? So now we have our SQL client, which is also this. What I can simply do is to just copy this definition and comment this out. And now we can simply come in here. So apart from the gene context, we are expecting additional thing like this. Okay, what is the error? Come on, don't waste my time. And now what I can simply do is here, now I can say u.sqldb. And okay, that's really one way we would now wrap all our handlers. So we have here delete, get, by ID and stuff like that. And now we can now go back to users. And in here now I can define, I can probably just call this handler. Okay, and now this is gonna come from users dot new user handler, and now I'm going to pass a DB again. Now this DB, as you can already imagine, would come from here, so it's going to be a GOMDB. And now instead of this, I can now do something like handler dot handle create. something like this. And now you can see how we wrap the request we get. So the request we get, we actually use this function to capture it, and then we modify the arguments. So instead of just the gene contents, we now add something additional before we actually pass it to the handler that's going to handle our request in the end. And now again, what we have to do is simply just come up here and maybe go to our API definition, for example. Now come here and add sql.DB. Again, it's going to be of type gumdb, for example. And now if we go back to, I can simply, just to silence this error, I can simply come here and say a.sqldb, and then that's going to go away. But of course, it's not signed yet. So again, we're gonna go back to main and now modify this function. So let's go back to new. Instead of just taking version, I'm also expecting you to give me a db, which is going to be of a pointer to gumdb. And now we don't even need to do all these parts anyways, because I think we used this, so it doesn't really matter, but I'm just gonna take this one out. So we have this already, and now what we can simply do, go back to main, and now we need to pass this in here. So SQL, come on, why are you so slow? Do something, SQLDB, and now we have it in. Okay, and once we have this, when we do this initialization, we can actually now just already pass it down in here so that our app have access to this. Okay, so now you see that's really one way we can take care of this. So that's what really happens is that in the beginning, we have our DB initialized like this, and then we pass this in when we set up our app more or less. And then the good thing is that these connections will, this of course they themselves are also connection pools. They will be reused for the entire life cycle of our app, and there would be no need for any new incoming request to actually try to establish a new connection, because there is one already, and it's also easy to come to manage. Okay, so that's really one thing we can actually do. Of course, I'm going to let you go ahead and make the modifications. The rest of them, I think we have some error here because now we have, of course, changed. I'm just probably going to pass a nil here. Probably fix that later. But the interesting thing, of course, is that you now see how we can capture the request, modify it, and kind of like reuse the resource we already have. And you can actually think of it as the state of our app. So we can actually reuse this and don't have to do this for every request. So again, it doesn't have to be like a database connection. You can actually think of a resource that you feel, for example, that certain requests should have access to. Maybe it could be a connection to some cache database, for example. You wouldn't want each incoming request to try to establish a new request, a new connection, and then before you can actually retrieve data from the cache. This could also be one way you can have all of this initialized just once when your app starts, and then you can actually pass this around, wrap them around your request, or whatever the case might be. If you don't want to pass them around requests, you can also even use channels, and you can establish a channel in here, and then through the channel you can, again, just like we have wrapped using these requests here, this one over here. In this case, this can now be a channel more or less. So there's actually it's unlimited, like there are no limits to what you could do with this. But again, the interesting thing is that you should always be able to differentiate um, um, in real cases where this is necessary, like again, authentication for every new coming request. We don't want to reuse the authentication, the sign off we have for you from the previous request. We want to do this all the time. So in that case, it makes sense that we leave our authentication middleware for every incoming request. But other than that, things like database connection or things similar, there is no need to do that for every incoming request. So we can always do it like this. So this is really one quick thing I wanted to show you. This is actually quite interesting, of course, because if you try to start to scale your app, and maybe even doing things like load testing, you would actually start to see that this might not really be the best way to go about it. So that was why I really thought it wise to show you this in this tutorial. Anyways, guys, it was a really quick one and was really what I wanted to show you. So again, feel free to reach out if this is not clear. If you think you have some opinions about this, of course, I'm always open to hear them. And yeah, if you're new, already know what you have to do. Subscribe, and I'll try to add each one. Anyway,